Hey, it's FeralInferno, and today we have a very special art book viewing. We have the Final Fantasy III Nintendo Power Player's Guide from the mid-90s. Let's journey back to the past and check this out. For those unaware, Final Fantasy III on the Super Nintendo was actually Final Fantasy VI in Japan and what we refer to as Final Fantasy VI today, but back then we called it Final Fantasy III. And what better way to start this player's guide than with the characters? They were so memorable. Terra, Locke, Mog, Edgar, and of course Cyan, Sabin, Gau, Celes. A really nice feature of this player's guide is that we have all the Blitz inputs right here for Sabin. Continuing on, we have Setzer and Shadow. And Realm and Strago. Man, such awesome characters in this game. Loved the dynamic between Shadow, Realm, and Strago, and what they had going on in the past. And the bonus characters. Very hidden bonus characters, Gogo and Umaro, who I did use on my original team when I first played the game back in 1995. For those that didn't catch our full live playthrough of Final Fantasy VI, or haven't played the game themselves, do be aware there are spoilers from this point on. So continue at your own risk. And of course, our story begins in the town of Narsh. Terra, Vix, and Wedge, such an epic beginning scene. And of course, Locke, explodes onto the scene. We get introduced to Mog very early on, just very briefly, which Mog was one of my favorite characters when I first started playing the game, and it was so cool, like the little Mugles, and he was on the cover of the box and the cartridge, so kind of felt like the main character, even though he really wasn't. Now, this artwork right here of Celes, man, one of my favorite artworks in the book. This isn't the full image. I think hopefully we'll see it later on in the book, but she's carrying the sword behind her. It always this very elegant photo, and man, I'd love to have a full painting of that art of Celes. Of course, there's Mount Colts, where we meet Sabin for the first time, and we find out his blitzes are like Street Fighter moves. It was Street Fighter type moves in a turn-based RPG. That was a really amazing, cool little thing that came about. Oh, the Leet River. Yes. The cool thing about the Leet River was this was a point where we had to make a decision with Terra, where she's going to join the Resistance or not. And then we get to the different scenarios, and we get to South Figaro with Locke, and where we meet Celes for the first time. And if people watch, there's the tunnel armor. We struggled against that tunnel armor. It was an epic fight, very epic fight. And we wanted to make sure we were, Grand Larceny Inferno, and stole the air lancet from the tunneler. The Sabin scenario was really terrific, and the longest of the three scenarios when you split off to these three different paths. And you get to obviously the Phantom Train, right? You have to suplex the train every time you play this game. It's a requirement. You must suplex the train. Not only should you do it, but you should also do it because it's super powerful against the train. Now, I was never a big Gau fan. On my ultimate save file from back in the day, I did have all but 3 of his rages, but I have learned since starting the FeralInferno channel that a lot of people actually really like Gau and found a use for him, which is kind of cool. And the big return to Narsh, where we have the giant battle with Kefka and the troops, and you have to have several parties to make sure that you're fending off the troops and make sure they don't conquer Narsh, which was really, really an awesome scenario. And there were so many cool little Easter eggs, like bringing Sabin and Edgar with you on the journey from there. Like if you go to Figaro Castle, you see a little extra scene with them. So there's a lot of different little Easter eggs that you could find in this game by just bringing different character combinations throughout the journey. On this journey, we get to the fabled and now famous Opera House, where we have the scene where there's a play and you have to take the place of the actress Maria, and you have to learn the lines and you're part of the play, and then Ultros is going to ruin the plot, and then Setzer comes in and totally, he's ruining the play. He wants to abduct Maria, but it's actually Celes. Such a roller coaster ride in the story at this point, and one of the strongest points in the story of Final Fantasy VI. Now, the first time I arrived at the Magitech factory, my goodness, I just stood there and listened and turned my TV up because the soundtrack was amazing, and it's the only place you're gonna hear this song, and it was so rocking good. Man, a lot of tracks in Final Fantasy VI get a lot of praise. Obviously, Terra's theme, Finding Friends, Locke's, heroic theme, but the Magitech Factory theme, man, one of the best. Not just in Final Fantasy VI, but of all video games. Now, I will say the journey through the sealed cave was a little bit of a letdown for me, because I was fully expecting when we went through the sealed cave to where the Esper world was, I thought we were actually going to the Esper world. I thought we had a whole nother world to explore. Oh, and this part was very helpful in the player's guide right here for the dinner. You have all the correct responses and how many soldiers you got to go find to get the best treasures. So very, very helpful part of the player's guide, especially if it's your first time playing through it. Now, this all leads up to the grand showdown on the floating continent. And, oh man, the floating continent had the, final dungeon or, second to final dungeon kind of vibes to it. This was going to be the ultimate showdown. Look at this, there's a whole map in here for the floating continent. This was a huge area and a huge difficulty spike as well. And, I was expecting, hey, we're close to the end of the game. I still remember the moment when everything went awry with Kefka and Gestal and the statues, and you gotta wait for Shadow and Celes coming in, and then the world essentially blows up and the bad guy wins? What? The bad guy wins? It was quite the shock as a young teenager playing this game back in the 90s. You're not used to the bad guys winning, at least not to that degree, and where it becomes the World of Ruin in the second part of the game. Now, the World of Ruin is a very interesting phase of the game because the World of Balance, the first half of the game, was very linear, very heavily story-based, character development-based, and it was a non-stop roller coaster of emotion and epicness that you just didn't want to put the controller down. When you get to the World of Ruin, everything changes. It almost feels like a little bit like a different game because at this point it's completely open world. You're making kind of your own decisions. You're going where you want. You're not getting a lot of direction, and you start off with Celes and your friends are all scattered throughout the world, and you get a few hints here and there, but the theme song Searching for Friends was really hit home because it was true, and the theme just worked so well. It gave you the encouragement once you get the airship to go find your friends, and it's man, you get pumped. That music, it just, whatever they did with that song, it just tied into your emotions. Yeah, all right, let's go, let's do this, let's go find our friends, let's go take it to Kefka, let's smash Kefka's tower, and let's do this. It really got you pumped. There were a lot of challenges in the World of Ruin, the Phoenix Cave being one of them, where you had to take 2 parties in to go find Locke in the Phoenix Esper. You had to have 8 people essentially battle ready and switch between your parties to get through a kind of a puzzle-based dungeon. The Tower of Fanatics, the Cult of Kefka. Man, you could only use magic in that area, and some of the enemies had reflect on them. Very difficult area. The Colosseum was pretty cool, a very fun place where you can bet items for different items, but a little bit rough because you couldn't know what you were going to bet for before committing to it, and then you can't control your characters. Your characters are controlled by the CPU, so that was a bit of a letdown for me because hey, okay, that's fine, it's one-on-one battles, but at least let me control my character, right? So if you have a character that knows a lot of low-level crappy magic, they might just get cast slow on the enemy, or vanish, or fire 1. Or they might do steel over and over again, or some Mog might try to do his dances and he keeps tripping over his feet. As the World of Balance was very linear, very story-based, you kind of had to follow a path. The World of Ruin was the complete opposite, where you had complete freedom to kind of go where you want, do what you want, how you want to do it, what order you want to do it in, if you want to do it at all. And there was so much to explore, so many little Easter eggs to find too, and it really kept you, as long as if you didn't use the player's guide like we're looking at right now, you were, which I didn't use it on my initial run, it was really nice because you got to like really explore and find things. It kind of almost like that feeling if you played Breath of the Wild a little bit, where like there was almost like something behind every corner. Even like some of the battles, if you get to the dinosaur forest, where like it's like these like hidden dinosaurs where you can fight them and they give you a massive amount of experience points. And then if you find the rare Brachiosaurus, you can get the Economizer as a super rare drop. So all these things that you could just kind of find, and it was awesome. It was great. And one of the best showdowns and final dungeons in gaming, Kefka's Tower. You had to bring, like with the Phoenix Cave, 2 teams, you had to have 8 characters ready to go. In Kefka's Tower, you needed 12 characters ready to go. You had to split between 3 teams of 4. And it can be very challenging if you're not prepared. Now, if you come in with like Ultima and the Offering and the Gem Box, you got some Economizers, you can swap between your equipment between the characters, and you got your stats boosted up and you know a lot of different spells, you'll be okay. But the final showdown with Kefka, I mean, there's so many bosses here anyways, even before you get to Kefka. And there's like 7, 8 bosses in this area, even before you get to Kefka. You get the showdown with the statues and the rematch with Atma. Man, and then you get to Kefka, it's just this massive battle, this huge chain. It takes like an hour to beat him and go through the whole ending. Completely epic and amazing. Now, this next section is kind of like a glossary of all the different magic spells and items and equipment and monsters and special abilities you can get. Very, very useful, especially if you're trying to get Strago's blue magic right here. It tells you like all the different enemies that you have to fight that you can get this magic from, because he learns magic by enemies casting the spells on him. And of course, having the items and the relics, kind of having a little explanation of what they all do. You can kind of like plan out your team a little bit, which is nice. And it's great to have a weapon list as well to kind of say, hey, here's all the weapons, here's how much, attack power they have, or special abilities that they do. And of course, you got the same thing for the armor as well. And when you're maintaining a character, there's a cast of 14 characters, and then you have to use 12 at the end game. Very, very useful. Also useful knowing what espers are out there, what are their level up upgrades, what spells can they teach you as well. There's another super helpful section of this player's guide. The enemies guide, also very useful. What I like to use this the most for is like the stealing. So like, hey, what can you steal from the enemies, right? Because each enemy, I think, has it's 1 or 2, sometimes 0, but like they can have up to 2 items you can steal. Sometimes it's a rare steal, and this lets you know what that is without having to steal a million times and hope that they have a second item to find out what that second item is, or maybe what they might drop as well. Very, very useful. The only thing I'll say is that it would have been nicer if this was alphabetized. It's not. Makes it very difficult to kind of like look for like the enemies that you're looking for when it's not alphabetized. Another great section is the Colosseum section, like we were talking about before. These items that you're betting, you don't know what you're going to be betting for. And then if you lose it, you lose it. And the great thing about the Colosseum section was in this book is that it tells you beforehand what you're actually betting, so you knew what you're getting into. This special attacks section was really useful too, especially if you were a Realm or a Gao player, because they would tell you, hey, here's what the rages would do, here's what the sketches and controls would do as well. Oh, the special strategy section, yes, this is awesome. This is where I learned the Vanish and X-Zone / Doom combo, where like, hey, if you cast Vanish on pretty much any enemy and you use Doom or X-Zone on them, it'll immediately get rid of them. And if an enemy is like, hey, Doom will bring them back to life, then X-Zone wouldn't, because X-Zone would just send them to another dimension. But There was a penalty to that. If you did Vanish on Doomgaze, who flies around and he can attack your airship, if you do Vanish and X-Zone on him, which will end the battle very quickly and easily, the problem is you'll defeat him, but you will not get the Bahamut Esper. So you want that Magicite. So do not use, pro tip from FeralInferno, do not use Vanish and X-Zone on Doomgaze. It will backfire. Now, here is some things you could have ordered back in the day, and I did. I ordered the CD soundtrack right here, and I wish I still had it. It was a 3 CD soundtrack. It was amazing. It had every song on there. And that is the end of our player's guide. And it looks like our friends Little Spanish Flea, who gave us this book, he got this from Games and Gadgets for $14.99. What? Here's a little bit of the reading on here. But yeah, special thanks to our friend Spanish Little Flea for selling us this art book. And thanks so much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see ya on the next one.